Yes, it's true, foreclosures are increasing in Southern California, but if you're looking for a clickbaity foreclosure apocalypse, you're gonna be disappointed. There's nuance in these numbers. In this video, we're gonna show you where the foreclosure numbers are increasing in Southern California, a free and easy way to track foreclosures in your neighborhood, if you'd like. We're gonna look at the national delinquency numbers and see how those compare to our local area. And there is one loan type that we need to be tracking when it comes to foreclosures, and we're gonna share which one that is. It's time for the Southern California Foreclosure Report. And away we go, starting with the first public step in the foreclosure process, and that's the notice of default. So a payment is missed, a minimum of 120 days later, the notice of default can be filed. Then we're gonna get into the next stages coming up, but you get the notice of trustee sale 90 days later, and the trustee sale can be 21 days later. That's the fastest it can go. This is looking at the notices of default in July, is going all the way back to 2015. What do you notice? We can see that the notices of default are up. And for example, in Los Angeles and most of these counties, they are up higher than where they've been in years past and going all the way back to 2015. So these are big numbers for notices of default. Now at a national level, we're going to go through those numbers. There is an increase in notices of default, but they're not at the point of pre-COVID numbers. But in certain areas, like Southern California, it looks like we're seeing more notices of default. The other important thing, and I don't often mention this, but when we look at these various notices, these are all property types. So any number of different properties go through the non-judicial foreclosure process in the state of California. So it could be single family homes, condos, townhomes, it could be gas stations, office buildings. We talked about some of those in past foreclosure updates where there were huge office buildings going through foreclosure. There's actually quite a bit of those because values have dropped significantly because they no longer are renting. Moving into notices of default, now we're including older data. We're including 2011 data. And when we do that, we can see, again, Los Angeles not that far off of 2011. Now, we find that in the data, in the notices of default in 2011, they were already decreasing and they were moving into the next phase, the notice of trustee sale. But definitely something worth watching. But what you should be doing if you're an investor looking for a foreclosure. Notices of trustee sale, that next phase, these numbers are up, and we can see for the different counties that we are at pre-COVID levels for notices of trustee sale. And this has continued to trend up. These really low numbers here, well, we had a foreclosure moratorium, so there weren't as many properties going into foreclosure, but it has since rallied back, and we can see that we're pre-COVID numbers for notice of trustee sale. Nowhere near where things were in 2011. A lot of properties, like 5 or 6 times as many that were receiving notices of trustee sale back then. Moving into real estate owned, so these are properties that go through the foreclosure process. They are foreclosed on. They go back to the lender. They're not purchased by a third party. They're not sold on the open market. They are foreclosed properties. We have these weird jumps in the data that we don't think are accurate. Where we get this data, we do the best we can to filter and double check, but I highly doubt 52 properties went back in Los Angeles in 2024, but that's what it shows. So looking at the numbers here, we had the foreclosure moratorium going on, so not as many properties, particularly when we put it into the context of pre-COVID years, many more properties going back to the bank at that point in time, and then nowhere near what we had in 2011. That was the big challenge back then, where you had standard sales on the market, you had short sales on the market, and you had these huge numbers of REO properties hitting the market. So it was tough back then for sellers, a great time for buyers, but we still had multiple offers and crazy bidding wars on properties back then. In any given market, you're going to have two things. You're going to have foreclosures in any given market, and you're also going to have bidding wars in any given market if a property is priced on the low end of market value. So those are the Southern California foreclosure numbers. What should you be doing with this data? We're going to show you. So if you're like me, you want to know what's going on with the foreclosure market in your local area. I happen to be a member of foreclosure.com. I pay the monthly fee, and it gives me updates on properties that receive those notices of default, plus a whole lot more. But let's say you're not ready. You just want to get a rough idea of what's going on. Well, you don't have to pay for the data. You can still go ahead and enter your email address. Hit subscribe, and you're going to have the opportunity to be alerted to a city, county, or zip code with alerts on properties that go into the foreclosure process. And this is kind of cool. Occasionally, in your email, you'll go ahead and get an update. Hey, another property has just had a notice of default filed. And it is handy to be able to track that. And then from there, you can go ahead and go after that property if you're so inclined. If you're digging our data, you're our kind of people. Let's connect if you're thinking of buying or selling in SoCal. How about beyond Southern California? What are we seeing at the national foreclosure level, and how does it compare to what we're seeing in SoCal? Well, ICE Mortgage Monitor Report has handy reference here, and we can see that the delinquency rate is up. And foreclosure starts are up. That's month over month, a change of about 10%, and more than 36% year over year. Sounds like a huge increase in foreclosure. And if I was a clickbaiting YouTuber, I'd use that. I'd say foreclosure's up 36% year over year. But they go ahead and qualify that below. Loans in active foreclosure have increased 22,000 year over year, but remain below pre-pandemic levels. So that's important context, that at the national level, we're seeing that it has increased in the number of properties going into the foreclosure process and getting behind on payments, but not even meeting pre-pandemic levels. Now, what we showed you in our data in Southern California is that it is exceeding, in some cases, pre-pandemic levels. And here this chart puts it in context. This is the national delinquency rate of first lien mortgages. What's the first lien mortgage? Well, that's the mortgage that's in the first position. You can have more than one mortgage. During the global financial crisis, just about everybody had two mortgages for anywhere from 100 to 105% of value. Crazy days back then. And in those cases, they'd stop making payments on both mortgages. This is tracking first lien mortgages. A lot more homes today just have one first mortgage, and we can see that the delinquency rate is below pre-pandemic levels. The biggest spikes are what we had during the global financial crisis. This other spike right here shows during COVID, when we had the forbearance programs in place. That's when a lot of folks stopped paying their mortgage and have since gone ahead and started to pay their mortgage again, and that's why delinquencies are so low. Some of the biggest loan types where we're seeing an increase in the delinquency and ultimately the foreclosure rate are VA loans and FHA loans. Those loans from the past 2 years, those folks are right at the same level or underwater on their mortgages because values have stopped going up dramatically. So we're seeing more of those folks falling behind. It will really come to a head in late 2025, early 2026, as some of the loss mitigation processes that were set up in COVID start to expire. And FHA loans will start to be foreclosed on. So we're gonna have to keep a close eye on that data as we get later in this year and the start of next year. Will we start to see an increase in the notices of default and ultimately those moving on to the auction block? It would be crazy to miss another market update. Sign up for our free weekly email newsletter and you won't miss a single one. Check out this next video right here that YouTube says you need to watch. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates, and we can't wait to work with you.